Hey guys, good morning. If you have your Bibles, turn to Lamentations 3. That's where we're going to be this morning. Just want to kind of set this up really quick. The past 2 weeks, we've been kind of walking through what a biblical lament looks like. The first part of it was your complaints and grievances against the Lord, basically. So, why have you done this? How have you let this happen? What is going on? That sort of thing. It's like a woe is me type thing. But we learned that we're not supposed to stay there. Last week we talked about how we complain, but true biblical lamenting leads to trust in the Lord. So we went from there and we used the yet bridge to go to God's promises. So now we're relying on his promises. And we're looking, we can look those up in the Word. We can see those. If you read Psalms, we've talked about that. If you go through the book of Psalms, you will notice a lot of biblical laments that talk about this exact thing. You see the lament, the complaining, then you see God's promises. Lean on those promises, right? So now that we've done those two things, now we go to almost something that is really specific to our lives. Sometimes, so when we complain or when we do those, sometimes it's like why are you allowing this bad thing to happen? And then God's promises are usually promises he's made to everybody. And to you, you may feel that specifically, but it is a very broad promise that he's made to his people. And so now we're getting to a really specific part of a lament, and that is the appeal. And I don't know about you, if you've ever had to appeal something, maybe it's a traffic ticket or something happened to you and you had to go and appeal something. I remember someone going before me to appeal. In fifth grade, I remember there were these two boys that I just didn't get along with. And we were at recess one day. And we're playing outside. And that day, one of them came to school and had a pink eye. It wasn't good, but he brushed it off and said it wasn't anything and that he just had some in his eye. He had it all day. So... At recess, though, him and this other boy, I don't know what I did or what made them do it, but they went to the teachers and told them that I was throwing rocks at them and got me in trouble. And one of the boys who had the pink eye said that was evidence that I hit him in the eye with a rock. And so the teacher that they went to obviously wasn't there. And they made the whole thing up. And so I got in a lot of trouble. I actually had to go in from recess and sit down with the teacher and listen to them lecture me about not throwing rocks and that sort of thing. And then I got in more trouble. I wasn't allowed to do certain fun things that they were doing that day, and ended up having to go to another classroom when they were doing these things. And so I was really upset that day. I went home and I talked to my mom and dad about it, and I was like, this didn't happen, and I got in this much trouble for it, and I don't understand why they wouldn't look at all sides. And so my mom actually went to the school the next morning and said, basically appealed, and went in there, and she might have, I don't know what she said, but whatever she said worked. But they found out that the kid that I hit in the eye had pink eye. And so they knew that they were lying and I was not. And so there was this appeal that happened, that good came out of it, which was really nice for me. But I think about the appeal and how we ought to do that with God. We see Moses do this. He intercedes and he appeals for Israel countless times in Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. He appeals constantly, and And so he's going before God and he's sharing their part of the story. Even though God knows everything, it is him laying his heart out before God, being completely vulnerable before God and going, we need your help. Well, in Lamentations 3, we see that. Okay, so we've gone through Jeremiah, as we believe is the author, Jeremiah's complaints. And then we've also seen his addressing God's promises. And now, starting in verse 40, he's going to start his appeal. So let's read through this, starting in verse 40. He says, "Let us test and examine our ways and return to the Lord. Let us lift up our hearts and hands into heaven, to God in heaven. We have transgressed and rebelled, and you have not forgotten. You have not forgiven. You have wrapped yourself with anger and pursued us, killing without pity. You have wrapped yourself with a cloud so that no prayer can pass through. You have made us scum and garbage be among the peoples. All our enemies open their mouths against us. Panic and pitfall have come upon us, devastation and destruction. My eyes flow with rivers of tears, because of the destruction of the daughters of my people. My eyes will flow without ceasing, without respite, until the Lord from heaven looks down and sees. My eyes cause me grief at the fate of all the daughters of my city. I have been hunted like a bird by those who were my enemies without cause. They flung me alive into the pit and cast stones on me. Water closed over my head. I said, I am lost. I called on your name, O Lord, from the depths of the pit. You heard my plea. Do not close your ear to my cry for help. You came near when I called on you. You said, do not fear. You have taken up my cause, O Lord. You have redeemed my life. You have seen the wrong done to me, O Lord. Judge my cause. You have seen all their vengeance, all their plots against me. You have heard their taunts, O Lord, all their plots against me. The lips and thoughts of my assailants are against me all the day long. Behold their sitting and their rising. I am the subject of their taunts. You will repay them, O Lord, according to the work of their hands. You will give them dullness of heart, for your curse will be on them. You will pursue them in anger and destroy them from under your heavens, O Lord. So what we see here at the very beginning, in the very first three verses that I read, in verse 40, 41, and 42, we see a self-examination. So before Jeremiah goes into an appeal, he does a self-examination. And he recognizes, one, he says, let us test and examine our ways and return to the Lord. This is a change of heart, okay? So up to this point, we've seen, woe is me, things are wrong, God's promises, and now he's saying, what we need to do is turn from our ways and go back to him. So there's a self-examination, and now there's a repentant heart, which if there's anything that I've read in the Bible that God honors, it is a repentant heart. It is someone saying, I need you, God, and I want to live a life of holiness and righteous ways because God wants me to. And because I love him, so he's recognizing this. And then he says, we have transgressed and rebelled, and you have not forgotten. This is, I recognize we have done something wrong. And then sandwiched in there is, let us lift up our hearts and hands to God in heaven. And so the idea of biblical lament in the appeal is a self-examination, repentance, and then understanding what you've done wrong. It is not this, say you're sorry, okay, I'm sorry. It is, I understand what I've done wrong. I have self-examined. Now I'm going to repent. And now I'm going to lift holy hands to him because his opinion, his thoughts, his ideas, his motives, his ways are all that matters. And so now he goes from there to the appeal. So the appeal looks like this. In these verses, he basically lays out the things that are going wrong. He's in his self-examination, he has now recognized the things that in God's justice are happening to him and to the people. And so he's going, it's like in my story. I understand that there were things that happened to me. And so that's what I'm bringing to the table when I appeal. I'm going to tell those teachers and say, what happened to me was A, B, and C. And that was not right. But in this, he understands that he deserves this justice. But he's still going to bring this before a loving, merciful, and grace-filled God. And because he understands the promises that have been given. And so he's going to say, these are the things that are happening. So he explains these things. And he gets all the way to the point, after he explains all of these things, he gets to verse 53 and he says, they flung me alive into the pit and cast stones on me. Water closed over my head. I said, I am lost. And so he explains all of the things that have been happening, the tears, the starving, all of this stuff. And now he's basically saying, and in the end, I'm going to die. Have you ever had that feeling where you, like this verse, water closed over my head, I said I am lost? I remember, if you ever had this feeling of like, you think you're going to drown, but you're not really going to drown. Like, but you think you're going to. And so my brother and I were swimming one time and we were playing this game with Lifeguard. Maybe you guys have played it whenever you were, swimming. I don't know, whenever else you would play it. But so me and my brother are playing it, and we're decent swimmers. Like I grew up swimming, and so my brother is pretending he's just floating there, like he's doing the dead man float. He might have been like upside down. I don't know, where you put your face down, you hold your breath. So I swim under him, and I'm like, hold on to my back. And so he holds on to my back. I cannot touch the ground. I can't touch the bottom. We're in a pond, okay? So like at this point, I start trying to swim and I'm underwater. He's on top of me. Now we're moving, but at a very slow pace because I'm the only one swimming at this point. And my brother is just acting like he's dead. And so I realize I don't have enough air. And so I'm like hitting him, but you know what that looks like underwater. It's like normally a hit is like this. Underwater, it's the lightest touch. And so then he's not moving, and then I just start flailing because I'm like, I'm gonna die under here. And so I'm like flailing and I'm trying to get him off of me, but he thinks I'm playing. And I'm like, my brother, while we're playing Lifeguard, I'm supposed to be saving him. He's going to kill me. And so at this point, he gets off and I get up to the top and I take this breath of air. Like, it is like, that was going to be my last breath underwater. Like, that's what it was going to be. But I got out. The thing is Jeremiah and his people have gone through just terrible things. And he's thinking, I am lost. I'm going to die. This is how I feel. That moment where, like, I don't think I'm going to get that breath of air. And this is what I love about God. So in verse 55, he says, I called on your name, O Lord, from the depths of the pit. You heard my plea. Do not close your ear to my cry for help. He says this because earlier he's saying that God shut the gate on their pleas. He was silent with them. So he's pleading with them. This is the appeal. This is the cry for help. And he says, you came near when I called on you. You said, do not fear. This is that breath of air that I got when I got above the water. This is God going, do not fear. And what is crazy about this time is they have had nothing but silence from God. And so Jeremiah is saying that God said, do not fear, is a huge sigh of relief. And so you see then in this chapter alone, because in chapter 4 and 5, it goes dark again. In this chapter, we see a turn of a mindset. It says, you have taken up my cause, O Lord. You have redeemed my life. You have seen the wrong done to me, O Lord. Judge my cause. You have seen all their vengeance, all their plots against me. So after God says, do not fear, it's like a renewed spirit. And so he's able to turn and go, now I'm going to go, you, God, are my vengeance. I've seen all of these things happen. I have witnessed it. I've experienced it. And now God is going to take care of me. And so not only that, but he's going to take care of the people that have done me wrong. And so with all of that, Lamentations chapter 3 done. I want to go back and I want to say this. Maybe you haven't been able to sit down and write this lament prayer. But I want you to I want to urge you to do it. You will find a different and new way of praying that leads to biblical evidence of God doing things in people's life when they pray this way. It's amazing. And so, first thing you need to do is lament, grieve, cry out to the Lord. Why have you done this? What is going on? Like, who are you, God? You say this, but you're doing this. Why is this happening? And then after you have written that, write the next yet, but, and then go to God's promises. Answer those questions with God's promises. And then after that, appeal to God. Write down the things. It's okay. The one thing that we can't do is stay silent from God. We can't. We see this back in Luke or forward in Luke, when God tells about the woman going to the selfish judge. It's like God's going, I want you to come to me. You think that she got help. I'm going to give you even more help because I'm your Father. And at this point, your appeal means so much to God because it's our way of going, we can't do it, God. We need your help. We need you to rescue us. We need you to go before us and do these things. We need you to right the wrongs because we can't. And so that's my challenge. It is understanding this lamenting process, this grieving God's promise and the appeal. And then from there, do it over and over and over again. I love what was written. I've been reading this book on Lamentations. And one of the things that it says is, don't allow one lament prayer to bring your trust back to God. It is a process of returning to him again and again and again and again in order for our trust to be renewed in him and understanding that he is active and moving. Don't mistake God's silence for him doing nothing. God is doing something all the time. All the time. And so that's my prayer for you. If you are hurting and things are going wrong and you don't know what to do, drop down on your knees and lament before God. It's worth it. It is worth it. Well, I hope this hits you well. We're going to be moving on to chapter 4 next week, and it's a doozy. It gets dark again, but God is doing something, and even in this book, Lamentations, God is doing something, and he's doing something in your life too. Trust him, love him, lean on him.